Hey guys, in this video we'll be having a look at the Noeby Keen Force 7'6" light rod. We'll look at its performance and I'll share my experience with you. Let's have a look. Let's discuss why this rod specifically and why you might be looking for something similar. I cast a lot of small crankbaits that weigh somewhere between 1.5 grams and up to maybe a maximum of 3 grams. What I want to do when I cast those is I want to maximize my distance and up my statistical odds for catching fish. So the longer my cast, the better my odds. So I want to maximize my distance, and that's why a slightly longer rod is definitely going to help me do that. Now, historically, I've had a very hard time finding long light action rods before. Specifically in my country, they're very, very hard to find. Generally speaking, you can find a medium or a medium light rod in 7 foot, which is kind of a bread and butter bass rod, or alternatively, you can find little 5 foot rods or 5'6" rods that are rated for light or ultralight. Now, the 5'6" rod is ideal for my weight range, but they suck for distance. A 7 foot rod is not ideal for the weight I'm trying to cast. They're usually rated from about 3 grams and up, and 7 foot isn't exactly long either. So that's why I was looking for a 7'6" rod or something longer than 7 foot for ages and ages and ages. Now I do own an 8 foot ultralight rod, but that didn't quite have the backbone to deal with larger fish, which I do quite often pick up. So I wanted something with a bit of backbone, but also longer than 7 foot that would give me maximum distance. And that's why I was looking for a rod like this one. So about 8 months ago, Noeby contacted me and asked if I wanted to test one of these rods. And obviously, because it fit in the range I wanted, I jumped on the opportunity. So I proceeded to beat the hell out of it for about 8 months to give you an honest idea of what I think the rod is like in actual use and what I think its pros and its cons are. So hopefully I'll be able to give you an honest review of this rod, but be aware that I did not pay for this rod. Noeby sent it to me for review. With that out of the way, let's have a look at some specifications before we look at the review. It's a 7'6" rod, which is supposed to be 2.29 meters. It's a 2-section rod with 9 guides in total. It's supposed to clock in at 109 grams, but technically it's 1 gram over if we throw it on a scale. Its casting weight range is supposed to be 2 to 10 grams, and it's a 30-ton carbon rod. Now, if we actually measure the total rod, it's 228.5 centimeters. Rod tip to reel seat is 202 centimeters, and this from the reel seat to the rod butt is 22 centimeters. Now, the tip diameter for this rod is 1.5 millimeters. The base diameter of the rod just above the reel seat is 8.5 millimeters. The rear guide diameter is 11.5 millimeters, and the tip guide diameter and the first 5 guides all have a diameter of 1.9 millimeters, so they're quite small guides. And they are Sea Guide branded guides. It's got a light gray EVA foam on the reel seat. It's got an aluminium nut on the reel seat, and it has a light gray EVA foam on the rod butt with EVA foam on the bottom as well. Now with the tech specs out of the way, let's have a look at some actual testing. First up is some distance testing, where I took the Noeby rod out with a selection of weights, specifically 2 grams, 4 grams, and 10 grams, to see how it performed at casting those. For testing, I used a Daiwa ProX 2500. That's the shallow spool version that was loaded with PE 0.6 Shimano Kairiki braid, and that has a diameter of 0.128 millimeters. So for the 2 gram weight, it cast an average of 26 meters. For the 4 gram weight, it cast an average of 32 meters. And for the 10 gram weight, it cast an average of 43 meters. Now we know how our rod casts, we can move on to some static load testing. Here we add 300 grams of weight to our rod tip, and we see how it deforms the rod. This is so we can see what the action of the rod actually is. Now, as you can see, the tip of the rod flexes and deforms very nicely. If we add the full weight of the 300 grams of the rod, you will see it deforms the first third of the rod with very little deformation further down into the blank. So I definitely say this is a fast action rod, as Noeby says it is. But I do this test so that you can see the taper for yourself and decide for yourself whether it's going to work for you or not. Alright, so let's have a look at some on-the-water footage while I discuss my experience with the rod. So my primary use for this rod was supposed to be throwing cranks in open water, and it does that very well. The 7'6" length gives you good distance, especially if you're using thinner braid, and the rod has enough flex to allow you to use small or extra small treble hooks on small crankbaits. But it also has enough backbone to allow you to manage larger fish without really too much stress involved. The upside of this rod specifically for throwing cranks to me is the fact that even though it's a light action rod aimed at throwing 2 to 10 grams, It'll go below the 2-gram mark quite easily. I cast 1.4 grams and 1.2 grams on it quite often. And even though it's whippy enough to cast the lighter weights, it does have a very fast recovery. So it's a nice firm rod for feeling bottom contact too, if you need to. So the rod easily allowed me to feel bottom composition, whether I'm fishing sand, whether I'm fishing gravel, whether I'm fishing rock. It's more than sensitive enough to be able to tell those things very easily and know whether you're fishing the right areas or not. So just because I'm using it on cranks doesn't mean you're going to. So I had to test the rod out on soft plastics as well. And really, the rod truly surprised me here. I didn't expect a lot of sensitivity because it's such a long rod, but I was very much blown away by the amount of sensitivity, specifically when fishing weightless soft plastics. I feel those little nibbles. Even in the slack line. Immediately had a nibble back there. A nibble. Nibble. With little 2-inch and 3-inch weightless soft plastics, I was able to, even on slack line, feel every nibble. So on a full day of fishing, I was able to not miss a single bite and was really blown away by the sensitivity. So if you're planning on doing finesse drop shot work, weightless soft plastics, and even maybe wacky rig type stuff, this rod really shines for finesse applications in that avenue. I was really very, very surprised by the sensitivity of this rod, specifically at its price point. Now in South Africa, this will sell for approximately 1,300 Rand, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. And internationally, that should be around $60. But the rod performs significantly better than the price point would indicate. I have more expensive rods that are not as nice, not as light for the performance, not as light for the recovery, and not as sensitive as this one. So because of that, I think the rod offers very, very good value. As I bring up value, let's start talking about pros and cons. Let's do cons first. This is going to be a very short list because I had to dig really hard to find cons and things I didn't like about this rod. Number one would be the fact that it doesn't actually have a bait keeper anyway on the rod. Now this is quite common in rods that are imported or from the Asian market, and it's not something that's difficult to overcome, but it's something that would bug people that are used to having a lure keeper on their rod, number one. And number two would be the fact that the epoxy job on the guides isn't the absolute best I've ever seen. Specifically, there are small imperfections in the epoxy and small imperfections in the wrapping. Now it's a very, very tiny nit to pick, but they aren't perfect. Do they impact the function of the rod? Not in any way, shape, or form. But if you're someone that is particularly picky about something like that, it might bug you. But I have to say, at the price point of this rod, these are not things I'm going to be complaining about. Next up would be the little bottom section here. It's completely EVA all the way around. Now this pick might pick up a little bit of wear and tear. This guy's about 8 months old now, and you can see there are a couple of scrapes and scratches on it. Not the end of the world, but if you like keeping your gear in absolute pristine condition, that might be something that bugs you. I like having a little harder or a firmer rubber cap. I wouldn't say hard. I hate when they add hard aluminium caps on the back here because then the rod tends to fall over or slide down. But this is an area that might wear, specifically because it's a light gray. This might show a little bit of wear and tear and do it faster than you'd like to, but again, that's a very tiny nit to pick. On the same topic, I have recommended this rod to one or two friends and they have bought a copy, and something they worried about was the fact that the gray EVA foam might get dirty. But again, this guy is 8 months old and I haven't washed it, so I wouldn't be particularly worried about the lighter EVA foam staining or getting dirty, and you can always just give it a wipe now with a wet cloth or a soapy cloth. It should take care of that. Those are the only cons I could dig up. And honestly, they're little guys to find. Now, with cons out of the way, I guess it's time for pros. The biggest pro for this rod for me is the fact that it is incredibly sensitive and very, very light. So that combination of being able to manipulate the rod very quickly and very easily and still having a lot of sensitivity makes it work well for twitching soft plastics or twitching small little cranks or small little jerk baits. I really love the rod for that, and the fact that it's very light and very sensitive combined with a fast recovery, that very much made me happy about this rod. It's a very, very light rod for how long it is. At 110 grams, it's particularly light and it balances very well with the 2500 series reel. I prefer to use it with a Daiwa BGMQ, which is a little bit heavier, so it adds a little bit more weight behind the handle. But generally speaking, it'll be a little tip heavy if you have an ultralight reel, but an average size 2500 reel should balance very well with this rod. The good quality guides and the high guide count of 9 guides total is also a very nice touch to this rod. The second would be the fact that the rod butt is nice and short. It matches up, if I grip my reel fully, it matches up very nicely with about 2/3 down in my forearm, so I can brace it on my forearm very nicely and very easily. So you can do a little tappy against your forearm, or as you're fighting a fish, brace against that. I find often with rods longer than 7 foot, the rod butt is a little too long. It gets caught on your clothing. It's annoying if the rod butt is a little bit too long. And this guy is very short for the length of the rod, which I very much like. So short butt, very sensitive rod, very light rod, balances well with 2500 size reel, and the fact that it has 9 guides in total and they're good quality guides. All of these things I think very much count in favor for this rod and make it a very good buy, especially because it's a very cost-effective rod. But they offer exceptional value because I think I have rods that are nearly double the price and similar performance. And that would be my last pro for this rod, the fact that it offers exceptional performance for very little money. Something else I think the Keen Force does very well is that because it's rated for 2 to 10 grams, I wouldn't push it much past 12 grams if I really had to, but it will go down to 1 gram and give you a good 20 meters if you use 1 gram. So I think it covers you from ultra light in a pinch to medium light if you absolutely have to. So it allows you to carry 1 rod instead of 2 separate ones. So because of that, and the fact that it offers very good value, I think the Keen Force is a kind of one of those must-haves in the range because it allows you to carry less stuff and performs very well. There are a number of other rods in this series which I'm kind of tempted to want to pick up as well, but I'm very much surprised by the versatility that this rod offers for its weight range and for its length. If you liked this review, please give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And if you like this sort of content, feel free to subscribe. There is more coming. Thank you for joining me. Have a good one.